The distant rumble of thunder echoed across the plains as Olivia Sullivan stared at the foreclosure notice, her trembling hands betraying the calm she tried so desperately to maintain. 4 years of drought, her husband's death, and now this, the southwestern bank of Arizona, was calling in the loan on the only home she'd ever known. It was the summer of 1885 in Chloride, Arizona territory, and the once thriving silver mining town had fallen on hard times. The boom days were over, leaving behind a hardscrabble existence for those who remained. Olivia's 20-acre farm on the outskirts of town had been her salvation after losing Thomas to pneumonia 2 winters ago. At 26, she never expected to be fighting alone to save everything they'd built together. Olivia folded the notice and tucked it into her apron pocket as she stepped out onto the porch of the modest farmhouse. The setting sun cast long shadows across her failing crops, corn withering in the field, vegetables struggling in the garden patch. The small herd of cattle her husband had been so proud of had dwindled to just 4 animals, barely enough to sustain her through another winter. $600 by the end of the month, she whispered to herself, the amount seeming as unreachable as the stars now appearing in the darkening sky. Might as well ask for the moon. The distant sound of hoofbeats pulled her from her thoughts. Visitors were rare this far from town, especially at dusk. Olivia reached for the shotgun that leaned against the doorframe. A woman alone couldn't be too careful in these parts. The rider approached slowly, his tall form silhouetted against the purple horizon. As he drew closer, Olivia recognized the distinctive paint horse that belonged to Quinn Sutherland, a cowboy who'd been working at the Triple R ranch north of Chloride for the past year. She'd seen him in town occasionally, exchanged pleasantries at church socials, but knew little about him beyond his reputation as a hard worker and a man of few words. "Evening, Mrs. Sullivan," Quinn called, stopping at a respectful distance from the porch. His voice was deep but gentle, carrying a hint of a Texas drawl. "Hope I'm not intruding." Olivia lowered the shotgun slightly but kept it visible. "Mr. Sutherland, what brings you out this way after sundown?" Quinn removed his hat, revealing dark hair that curled slightly at the edges. His face was tanned from years under the sun, with keen eyes that seemed to take in everything at once. "I was passing by and noticed your fence line is down near the creek. Thought you might want to know before your cattle wander off." The kindness of the gesture caught Olivia off guard. Most men in Chloride barely acknowledged her existence since Thomas died, except when they were trying to buy her land at a fraction of its worth. "That's very thoughtful of you, Mr. Sutherland. Thank you." She hesitated, then added, "Would you care for some water? It's a warm evening." Quinn nodded, dismounting with the fluid grace of a man who'd spent most of his life in the saddle. He was taller than Olivia had realized from their brief encounters in town, with broad shoulders and hands that spoke of years of hard labor. "Much obliged," he said, tying his horse to the hitching post and approaching the porch with measured steps. As Olivia fetched water from the kitchen pump, she couldn't help noticing how Quinn's eyes surveyed the farm with a practiced gaze, taking in the state of the barn, the fields, the chicken coop. There was no judgment in his expression, just quiet assessment. When she returned with a tin cup of water, he accepted it with a nod of thanks. "Fine piece of land you've got here, Mrs. Sullivan." "It was," Olivia said before she could stop herself. The foreclosure notice seemed to burn in her pocket. "The drought hasn't been kind." Quinn drank deeply, then handed the cup back. "No, it hasn't, but this land has good bones. The right rain at the right time could turn things around." "Rain and a miracle," Olivia murmured. Something in her tone must have alerted Quinn that all was not well. His eyes, A striking shade of blue in the fading light studied her face. "Forgive me for asking, but is everything all right, Mrs. Sullivan?" For a moment, Olivia considered the polite lie the one she'd been telling the shopkeepers in town, the neighbors who occasionally checked on her. But something about Quinn Sutherland's direct gaze made pretense feel pointless. "The bank is foreclosing at the end of the month," she said simply. "4 years of drought and my husband's medical bills before he passed. It was too much." Quinn's expression remained steady, though a muscle in his jaw tightened. "I'm sorry to hear that. How much are they asking?" $600. Olivia gave a small, bitter laugh. "Might as well be 6,000 for all the chance I have of raising it." Quinn was quiet for a long moment, his gaze moving from Olivia to the farmhouse behind her. It wasn't a grand place by any means, but the care that had gone into building it was evident in every hand-hewn beam and carefully placed stone. "Mr. Crawford over at the Triple R has been talking about letting some hands go," he said finally. "Ranch is cutting back with beef prices falling. I've been looking for other opportunities." He hesitated, then added, "I'm good with cattle, horses too, and I can fix most anything that breaks." Olivia understood what he was offering his labor in exchange for a place to stay, but she shook her head. "That's kind, Mr. Sutherland, but I'm losing the farm. I can't pay wages, and I wouldn't feel right having you work for room and board when it all might be gone in a few weeks." Quinn placed his hat back on his head, adjusting it slightly against the evening breeze. "I understand. Still, that fence by the creek needs fixing, and it wouldn't be right to leave a lady's cattle to wander off. I'll come by tomorrow if that's agreeable. No charge." Before Olivia could protest further, he was already moving toward his horse. She followed him down the porch steps. "Mr. Sutherland, I appreciate the offer, but just being neighborly, Mrs. Sullivan." Quinn swung into the saddle with practiced ease. "My pa always said a man who won't help a neighbor in need isn't much of a man at all." With that, he tipped his hat and rode off, the paint horse's hoofbeats fading into the gathering darkness. Olivia stood watching until both horse and rider disappeared from view, wondering at the unexpected kindness of a man she barely knew. True to his word, Quinn arrived early the next morning. Olivia spotted him from the kitchen window as she prepared breakfast, his tall figure already at work on the broken fence line. She hurried to finish cooking, then carried a plate of eggs and biscuits down to the creek. Quinn had removed his jacket in the growing heat of the day, his shirt sleeves rolled up to expose forearms corded with muscle. He worked with quiet efficiency, his movements precise and practiced. "You didn't have to start so early," Olivia called as she approached. "I would have offered you breakfast first." Quinn straightened, wiping sweat from his brow with the back of his hand. "Morning, Mrs. Sullivan. Thought I'd get an early start before the day heats up too much." "Well, I brought you something to eat." She held out the plate. "It's not much, but it's hot." He accepted the food with genuine appreciation. "This is mighty kind of you. Been a while since I had home-cooked biscuits." They settled in the shade of a cottonwood tree by the creek, Quinn eating while Olivia watched the sluggish water trickling past. The creek had once been wide and deep enough for swimming, but the drought had reduced it to a mere shadow of itself. "How long have you been in Chloride, Mr. Sutherland?" Olivia asked, breaking the comfortable silence. Quinn finished a bite of biscuit before answering. "Coming up on a year and a half now. Came west from Texas after the big drought of '83 took my family's ranch." Olivia glanced at him with new understanding. "So you know what it's like?" "Yes, madam, I do." His gaze met hers, a moment of shared understanding passing between them. "Lost everything except my horse and the clothes on my back. Been working my way back ever since." "I'm sorry," Olivia said softly. Quinn shrugged, but there was no indifference in the gesture, just acceptance. "Life out here is hard. You adapt or you don't survive. And your family. A shadow crossed his face. Lost Pa to the influenza in '79. Ma followed a year later, no siblings. Been on my own since I was 20. Olivia calculated quickly. That would make him around 26, now her own age. Young to have weathered so much. What about you? Quinn asked, finishing the last of his breakfast. How long have you been in Arizona territory? 5 years. Olivia watched a hawk circling overhead, riding the thermal currents. Thomas and I came from Missouri after we married. He had dreams of starting a cattle ranch out west. The silver boom was just ending in chloride, but the land was good and affordable. He had a good eye, Quinn observed. This is fine grazing land when the rains come. Yes, Olivia agreed, a touch of pride in her voice. The first year was wonderful. We built the house, started with a small herd. Then the drought began. She sighed, pulling absently at a blade of dry grass. By the time Thomas got sick 2 winters ago, we were already struggling. The doctor bills. She trailed off, the memory still raw. Quinn was quiet, respectful of her grief. After a moment, he set the empty plate aside. Thank you for breakfast, Mrs. Sullivan. I should get back to that fence. They fell into an unexpected routine over the next few days. Quinn would arrive at dawn, work until the heat of the day became too intense, then return in the late afternoon to work until dusk. Olivia insisted on feeding him, and gradually their conversations grew longer and more comfortable. On the 4th day, Quinn arrived with tools and supplies she hadn't seen before. The pump in your barn is about to give out, he explained when she questioned him. Thought I'd fix it before it fails completely. Mr. Sutherland, Olivia said, frustration creeping into her voice despite her gratitude. I appreciate all you've done, but I can't keep accepting your help without compensation. Quinn paused, adjusting his hat against the morning sun. Mrs. Sullivan, I understand your pride. But sometimes neighbors help neighbors, that's all there is to it. We're hardly neighbors, Olivia pointed out. The Triple R is 15 miles north. A smile touched the corner of Quinn's mouth. Out here, that practically makes us next door. Despite herself, Olivia laughed, a sound she realized had been absent from the farm for too long. Quinn's smile widened in response, and for a moment, the burden of her troubles seemed lighter. The days passed, and with each sunrise, Olivia found herself looking forward to Quinn's arrival. He was a man of his word, fixing not only the fence but the leaky roof on the barn, the broken wheel on her cart, and a dozen other small repairs that had been beyond her ability to manage alone. They settled into an easy companionship, sharing meals and stories as they worked side by side. Quinn spoke of his years as a cowboy, driving cattle through Texas and up to Kansas, of nights under stars so bright they seemed close enough to touch. Olivia told him about growing up in Missouri, her father's small general store, and how she'd learned to bake from her mother. One evening, as they sat on the porch watching fireflies blink in the gathering darkness, Quinn asked the question that had been hovering between them. Have you thought about what you'll do after the farm? Olivia's hand stilled in her lap. She'd been avoiding that particular thought, focusing instead on each day as it came. I don't know, she admitted softly. There's not much call for a farmer's widow with few skills beyond cooking and gardening. You underestimate yourself, Quinn said, his voice gentle but firm. You've kept this place going alone for 2 years. That takes strength and intelligence. And yet here I sit, about to lose it all anyway. Olivia couldn't keep the bitterness from her voice. Quinn was quiet for a long moment. When he spoke again, his tone was careful. There might be a way to save the farm. Olivia turned to look at him, moonlight silvering his profile. What do you mean? I've been setting aside money for a few years now, he said slowly. Planning to buy my own piece of land eventually, start over. Understanding dawned on Olivia with a suddenness that took her breath away. Mr. Sutherland, I can't possibly, it's sitting in the chloride bank, Quinn continued as if she hadn't spoken. Just over $700. That's your future, Olivia protested. Your dream. Quinn turned to meet her gaze directly. Dreams can change, Mrs. Sullivan. The weight of what he was offering hung between them. It wasn't just money, it was years of hard work, sacrifice, and hope. Why? Olivia whispered. Why would you do this? Quinn looked out at the darkened fields, gathering his thoughts. When I lost my family's ranch, there was no one to help, no one who cared enough to try. I swore if I ever had the chance to prevent someone else from feeling that kind of loss, I would. It was the most he'd ever said at one time, and Olivia could hear the emotion underneath the carefully chosen words. That's very noble, she said softly, but this isn't your responsibility. Maybe not, Quinn agreed, but it feels right. Olivia stood abruptly, moved by his generosity but unwilling to accept such a sacrifice. I need to think about this, Mr. Sutherland. Quinn nodded, respecting her need for space. Of course, but the bank won't wait forever. I know that all too well, she replied, her voice tight with emotion. That night, Olivia lay awake long after Quinn had ridden back to the Triple R, her thoughts in turmoil. His offer represented salvation for the farm, but at what cost to him? And what would it mean for their relationship, which had evolved from cautious acquaintances to something that felt increasingly like friendship, or perhaps something more? The next morning, Olivia was surprised when Quinn didn't appear at his usual time. By midday, concern had begun to replace disappointment. It wasn't like him to break his word without sending word. Late in the afternoon, the mystery was solved when Olivia spotted Quinn riding toward the farm, accompanied by another rider. As they drew closer, she recognized Walter Prescott, the bank manager from Chloride. Anxiety knotted in her stomach as she waited on the porch for the two men to arrive. Quinn's expression was unreadable as he dismounted, but there was a determined set to his shoulders that she'd come to recognize. Mrs. Sullivan, Mr. Prescott greeted her with a tip of his hat. He was a thin man with spectacles and a perpetually worried expression. I hope you're well today. Mr. Prescott, Olivia acknowledged, her voice cooler than the spring water in her well. This is an unexpected visit. Mr. Sutherland here asked me to ride out with him to discuss your situation. The banker glanced at Quinn, then back to Olivia. He's made quite an interesting proposal. Olivia's eyes narrowed as she looked at Quinn. Has he now? Quinn met her gaze steadily. I asked Mr. Prescott to consider a partnership arrangement, my investment in exchange for half ownership of the farm. Surprise rendered Olivia momentarily speechless. This wasn't what she'd expected at all. Mr. Prescott cleared his throat. It's an unusual arrangement, to be sure, but Mr. Sutherland has the funds to clear your debt, and his proposition seems sound from a business perspective. The bank would release its claim on the property, and you and Mr. Sutherland would become equal partners in the venture. Equal partners, Olivia repeated slowly, trying to process what was being proposed. You'd retain ownership of the house and immediate surroundings, Quinn explained. We'd share the farmland, the livestock, and any profits. I'd provide the labor and investment needed to make the farm productive again. It was a solution she hadn't considered, neither charity nor a complete loss of her home. Still, the implications were significant. I'll need time to consider this proposal, Olivia said carefully. Of course, Mr. Prescott nodded. However, I should remind you that the bank's deadline remains the end of the month. That's just over 2 weeks from now. I'm aware of the timeline, Mr. Prescott, Olivia replied, an edge to her voice. I'll have my answer for you both within the week. After the banker departed, Quinn remained, standing somewhat awkwardly by his horse. The easy companionship they'd developed over the past days seemed suddenly strained. "You should have discussed this with me before bringing Mr. Prescott out here," Olivia said, unable to keep the hurt from her voice. Quinn removed his hat, running a hand through his hair, a gesture she'd noticed he made when uncomfortable. "You're right, and I apologize. I thought you might refuse outright if I suggested it first. So you decided to present me with a fait accompli instead." Olivia crossed her arms, her irritation growing despite understanding his motives. "No," Quinn said firmly. "Nothing's decided. Mr. Prescott knows that. I just wanted to show you there could be a middle path, one that doesn't involve charity or losing your home." Olivia sighed, her anger fading as quickly as it had flared. "Partnership is a serious commitment, Mr. Sutherland, almost like a marriage in its way." Something flickered in Quinn's eyes at the comparison. "I'm aware of that, Mrs. Sullivan. I wouldn't have suggested it if I wasn't prepared for the responsibility. And what happens when you decide to move on, when some other opportunity calls you away from chloride?" "I'm not a drifter, Olivia," Quinn said quietly, using her first name for the first time. "Not anymore. I've been looking for a place to put down roots. I believe this farm could be that place." The sincerity in his voice was unmistakable, and Olivia found herself wanting to believe him. Over the past weeks, she'd seen his dedication, his skill, and his integrity. If she were to choose a partner to save her farm, she could hardly find a better candidate. "I'll think about it," she promised, her tone softer now. "Truly, I will," Quinn nodded, replacing his hat. "That's all I ask." After he left, Olivia walked the boundaries of her land, trying to imagine sharing it with Quinn Sutherland. The idea wasn't as troubling as she might have expected. In fact, there was something almost appealing about having a partner again, someone to share the burden and the joy of bringing life from the earth. That evening, a sudden summer storm broke the heat of the day, rain drumming against the roof of the farmhouse with an intensity that had been absent for years. Olivia stood on the porch, watching as the parched ground eagerly drank in the moisture, and felt something akin to hope stirring within her. When Quinn arrived the next morning, the world seemed washed clean. Puddles dotted the yard, and the air carried the sweet scent of rain-soaked earth. He approached the porch cautiously, clearly uncertain of his welcome after yesterday's confrontation. "That rain was a blessing," he said by way of greeting. "Your corn might have a fighting chance now." Olivia nodded, offering him a tentative smile. "I thought the same thing. Would you like some coffee? I've just made a fresh pot." Relief crossed Quinn's face at the olive branch. "That would be welcome, thank you." They sat at her kitchen table, steam rising from their cups in the cool morning air. Through the window, Olivia could see that even the withered garden seemed to have perked up overnight, green shoots standing a little taller in the sunlight. "I've been thinking about your proposal," she said finally, cradling her cup between her hands. Quinn waited, giving her the space to continue at her own pace. "It's a generous offer and a practical solution to my predicament," Olivia admitted. "But I need to understand why you're willing to invest your life savings in a struggling farm. The truth, please." Quinn considered her question carefully before answering. "When I first came to Chloride, I was just passing through. Another town, another job, but something about this place felt different." He paused, gathering his thoughts. "Then I saw you at church one Sunday, sitting alone, your head held high despite the whispers about the widow Sullivan who was too stubborn to sell her failing farm." Olivia flinched slightly at the reminder of how the town viewed her. "I admired your determination," Quinn continued. "And later, when I got to know you, I admired your kindness, your intelligence, and your strength even more." He met her gaze directly, his blue eyes earnest. "I believe in this land, Olivia, and I believe in you. Together, I think we could build something worth having." The simplicity of his declaration touched something deep within her. "It wouldn't be easy," she warned. "Even with the debt cleared, we'd be starting nearly from scratch." "Nothing worthwhile comes easy," Quinn replied, "but I'm not afraid of hard work." Olivia took a deep breath, making her decision. "Then I accept your proposal, Mr. Sutherland. Partners." She extended her hand across the table, and Quinn's larger one enveloped it in a firm handshake that felt like a promise. "Partners," he agreed, a smile spreading across his face that transformed his usually serious features. "And please, call me Quinn." The next 2 weeks passed in a flurry of activity. Quinn resigned from the Triple R, explaining his new venture to a surprised but supportive Mr. Crawford. He moved his few possessions into the small bunkhouse adjacent to the barn, establishing his presence on the farm while maintaining propriety. Together, they met with Mr. Prescott to finalize the partnership agreement. The banker seemed relieved to have found a solution that allowed the bank to recover its money without the unpleasantness of a foreclosure. The debt was cleared, the papers signed, and suddenly the Sullivan farm became the Sullivan-Sutherland farm. Word of their arrangement spread quickly through Chloride, generating considerable gossip. Some viewed it as a purely business arrangement. Others suspected romantic motivations, while a few cynical souls predicted disaster. Olivia and Quinn ignored the speculation, focusing instead on the enormous task of revitalizing the farm. The summer rains came more regularly after that first storm, as if the heavens themselves approved of their partnership. The corn grew taller, the garden flourished, and the creek rose to levels not seen in years. Quinn repaired irrigation ditches that had been dry for so long Olivia had almost forgotten they existed, channeling the precious water where it was most needed. With his connections at the Triple R, Quinn arranged to purchase additional cattle at a favorable price, gradually rebuilding the herd. He spent long days mending fences, reinforcing the barn and clearing overgrown fields, while Olivia expanded the vegetable garden, tended the chickens, and preserved the sudden bounty for the winter ahead. They settled into a comfortable routine, sharing meals and the daily decisions that came with running the farm. In the evenings, they often sat on the porch, watching the sunset while discussing the day's accomplishments and planning for tomorrow. It was during one such evening, nearly a month after forming their partnership, that Olivia realized how much her feelings for Quinn had deepened. He was describing his plans for rotating the cattle between pastures to allow the grass to recover, his hands gesturing expressively as he spoke. The last rays of the setting sun caught in his dark hair, and something about the moment his passion for the land, his thoughtful consideration of the future, the easy way they had come to understand each other made her heart beat a little faster. Quinn must have noticed her sudden silence, for he paused mid-sentence. "Olivia, is something wrong?" She shook her head, offering a smile to cover her momentary confusion. "Not at all, I'm just grateful for how things have turned out." Quinn's expression softened. "As am I." Their eyes held for a moment longer than usual before Olivia looked away, suddenly conscious of the shifting nature of their relationship. They were partners, yes, but something else was growing between them, something neither had acknowledged aloud. As summer gave way to fall, the changes on the farm were remarkable. Fields that had lain fallow for years were producing again. The cattle were healthy and growing. Quinn had even purchased 2 horses at auction, a sturdy mare for Olivia, and a gelding for himself, making it easier to manage the expanding operation. One crisp October morning, Olivia rode out to the north pasture, where Quinn was checking on a pregnant heifer. The mountains in the distance wore the first dusting of snow on their peaks, a stark contrast to the golden grasslands below. She found him kneeling beside the young cow, his expression concerned as he examined her condition. "How is she?" Olivia asked, dismounting and approaching carefully. "Restless," Quinn replied. "Might be early labor. Her first calf, she's nervous." Olivia knelt beside him, her skirts spreading on the grass. The heifer's sides heaved with rapid breathing, her eyes wide with fear. "Poor thing," Olivia murmured, stroking the animal's neck soothingly. "The first time is always frightening when you don't know what to expect." Quinn glanced at her, a question in his eyes that he didn't voice. "I helped deliver many calves growing up," Olivia explained. "And I assisted the midwife in town a few times." The principle is much the same, life finding its way into the world. They stayed with the heifer as the morning stretched into afternoon, offering quiet reassurance as nature took its course. When the calf finally emerged a healthy bull with a white face like his mother, both Quinn and Olivia were exhausted but elated. "Look at that," Quinn said softly as the mother began cleaning her newborn with long, careful strokes of her tongue. "A new beginning." Olivia nodded, unexpectedly moved by the simple miracle of birth. "One of many for this farm, I hope." As they rode back to the farmhouse, the setting sun painting the landscape in shades of gold and amber, Olivia found herself studying Quinn's profile. The months of outdoor work had darkened his already tanned skin, and the constant physical labor had honed his naturally strong build. But it was the changes in his demeanor that most caught her attention, the way he rode with his shoulders relaxed, his expression peaceful. He had found his place here, just as he'd said he would. "You're staring, Mrs. Sullivan," Quinn said without turning his head, though a smile played at the corners of his mouth. Olivia felt heat rise to her cheeks at being caught. "Just thinking how different you seem from the man who rode up to my farm 4 months ago." Quinn guided his horse closer to hers as they followed the winding path through the tall grass. "Different how?" "More settled," Olivia replied thoughtfully. "More at home." "I am at home," Quinn said simply. He hesitated, then added, "It's not just the land, you know, well, it's you too, Olivia." The directness of his statement made her breath catch. They had been dancing around their growing feelings for weeks, neither quite ready to put words to the change in their relationship. Quinn, whatever she might have said, was interrupted by the sudden appearance of a rider approaching rapidly from the direction of town. As the figure drew closer, Olivia recognized Jimmy Taylor, the 15-year-old son of the general store owner. "Mrs. Sullivan, Mr. Sutherland," the boy called, reining his pony to a stop beside them. "Pa sent me to fetch you. There's trouble in town." Quinn straightened in his saddle, instantly alert. "What kind of trouble, Jimmy?" "It's Mr. Prescott from the bank," the boy explained breathlessly. "He's been arrested. They're saying he embezzled money and falsified loan documents." The regional bank examiner came all the way from Tucson and found all sorts of irregularities. Olivia exchanged a worried glance with Quinn. "What does this mean for the bank's customers?" "That's why Pa sent me," Jimmy said. "The examiner's checking all the recent transactions. He wants to talk to you both about your partnership agreement and the loan that was paid off." Quinn's expression darkened. "When does he want to see us?" "First thing tomorrow morning," Jimmy replied. "Pa says to tell you not to worry, lots of folks in Chloride are in the same boat. The examiner just wants to make sure everything's proper." After the boy departed, Quinn and Olivia continued toward home, the peaceful mood of earlier shattered by this unexpected news. "You think there could be problems with our agreement?" Olivia asked, anxiety creeping into her voice. Quinn considered the question carefully. "We did everything properly. I paid the debt, we signed the partnership papers, everything was witnessed. But if Prescott was cooking the books, he didn't need to finish the thought. If the bank examiner found irregularities with their transaction, the security they'd worked so hard to establish could be at risk once again. That night, neither slept well. Olivia tossed and turned in the farmhouse, while Quinn paced the floor of the bunkhouse, both wrestling with the possibility that their hard-won progress might be undone. They rode into Chloride together the following morning, the town unusually busy for a weekday. News of the bank scandal had drawn people from outlying areas, all anxious to learn if their savings were secure or their loans valid. The bank examiner had set up an office in the town hall, a stern-faced man named Harrington, with a meticulous manner and little patience for the chaos around him. Olivia and Quinn waited their turn, watching as other townspeople emerged from their interviews with expressions ranging from relief to distress. When they were finally ushered into the makeshift office, Harrington wasted no time on pleasantries. "Mrs. Sullivan, Mr. Sutherland, I understand you recently entered into a partnership agreement involving the settlement of a substantial loan. Is that correct?" "Yes, sir," Quinn answered, his voice calm despite the tension Olivia could see in his shoulders. "I paid the outstanding debt on Mrs. Sullivan's farm and became a half-owner of the property." Harrington consulted the ledger before him. "And the amount was $600, paid in full on July 14th of this year." "That's correct," Olivia confirmed. "Mr. Prescott provided documentation showing the loan was satisfied, and we signed the partnership agreement the same day." The examiner made a note, then looked up at them with sharp eyes. "Are you aware that Mr. Prescott had been inflating loan amounts and pocketing the difference?" Olivia gasped softly. "No, we had no idea." "In some cases," Harrington continued, "he was charging double the interest rate approved by the main bank in Tucson and keeping the excess for himself." Quinn leaned forward slightly. "Are you saying our loan might have been affected by this fraud?" Harrington consulted his papers again. "Based on my review, Mrs. Sullivan's original loan was legitimate. However, the interest rate was improperly calculated." He adjusted his spectacles. "According to the correct terms, the amount due should have been $485, not $600. Olivia felt as though the floor had dropped away beneath her. "So I was overcharged by more than $100. "It appears so," Harrington confirmed. "Mr. Prescott has been quite ingenious in his deceptions, but not quite ingenious enough to avoid detection forever." Quinn's expression hardened. "What happens now? Our partnership is based on the amount I paid to clear the debt." The examiner steepled his fingers thoughtfully. "The bank is prepared to make restitution to customers who were defrauded. In your case, that would mean refunding the excess payment $115. Relief washed over Olivia, but Quinn remained tense beside her. "And our partnership agreement, is it still valid?" "That's between you and Mrs. Sullivan," Harrington said. "From the bank's perspective, the loan is satisfied. How you choose to adjust your private arrangement in light of this new information is your business." Outside the town hall, Olivia and Quinn paused to process what they'd learned. The street bustled with activity as other townspeople came and went from their own meetings with the examiner. "So you overpaid," Olivia said quietly, "by quite a substantial amount." Quinn nodded, his expression unreadable. "It seems so." "You should take the refund when it comes," Olivia continued. "It's rightfully yours." "And what about our partnership?" Quinn asked, finally meeting her gaze. "Does this change things for you?" Olivia considered the question carefully. "The agreement was based on what we believed was the correct amount. If you'd known the actual figure was lower, would you still have proposed the partnership?" Without hesitation, Quinn replied, his voice firm. "The exact amount was never the point for me, Olivia. It was about saving the farm and finding a place where I belonged." His honesty touched her deeply. "Then I see no reason to alter our arrangement. Partners is partners, as they say." A slow smile spread across Quinn's face, relief evident in every line of his body. "I was hoping you'd say that." As they prepared to leave town, a commotion near the sheriff's office caught their attention. A small crowd had gathered to watch as Mr. Prescott, handcuffed and dejected, was escorted to a waiting prison wagon. The former banker kept his head down, avoiding the accusing stares of the townspeople he had defrauded. "Almost feel sorry for him," Quinn murmured as they watched from a distance. Olivia glanced at him in surprise. "After what he did to us and others," Quinn shrugged. "Almost. Man got greedy, forgot what really matters. Now he's lost everything that can't be measured in dollars: his reputation, his freedom, the trust of his neighbors." It was a thoughtful observation, and Olivia found herself nodding in agreement. "I suppose you're right. Still, it's hard to forgive someone who was willing to take my home for his own profit." "Understandable," Quinn agreed as they mounted their horses. "Forgiveness takes time." The ride back to the farm was quiet, both lost in their own reflections. The revelation about the bank fraud had been unsettling, but somehow it had also clarified things between them. Their partnership had weathered its first real test, emerging stronger for the challenge. As autumn deepened, the farm continued to thrive under their joint care. The refund from the bank arrived as promised, and Quinn immediately invested it in additional fencing and feed for the winter. By November, preparations for the cold months were well underway. The barn was filled with hay, the root cellar stocked with preserved vegetables, and the smokehouse filled with freshly cured meat. Thanksgiving approached, bringing with it an invitation from the Crawford family at the R to join them for the holiday meal. Quinn had maintained good relations with his former employer, and Mrs. Crawford had taken a liking to Olivia during church socials. "We should bring something," Olivia fretted as they discussed the invitation. "Mrs. Crawford is known for her feasts, but I can't arrive empty-handed." "Your apple pie would be welcome," Quinn suggested. "Mr. Crawford mentioned it specifically when he issued the invitation." Olivia smiled, pleased that her baking had made an impression. "Apple pie it is, then, and perhaps some of the preserves we put up." The Triple Artiques main house was impressively large compared to Olivia's modest farmhouse, a testament to the ranch's success under Mr. Crawford's management. Nearly 20 people gathered around the long dining table, including the Crawford family, various ranch hands, and a few other neighbors. Olivia found herself seated beside Quinn, acutely aware of how natural it felt to be attending the gathering together. Throughout the meal, she noticed how others seemed to regard them as a unit: Quinn and Olivia, the Sutherland farm. No one questioned the unusual nature of their partnership or suggested impropriety. They had become an accepted part of the community's fabric. Mrs. Crawford, a robust woman with a talent for bringing people together, ensured the conversation flowed as freely as the food. "Olivia, dear, Quinn tells me your vegetable garden produced wonderfully this year. You must share your secrets. My tomatoes were terribly disappointing." As the women discussed gardening techniques, Mr. Crawford engaged Quinn in conversation about cattle prices and breeding strategies. The easy camaraderie of the gathering warmed Olivia's heart, reminding her of family Thanksgivings from her childhood, a sense of belonging she had feared lost forever after Thomas's death. Later, as they stood on the porch preparing to depart, Mr. Crawford pulled Quinn aside for a private word. Olivia couldn't hear their conversation, but she noticed Quinn's expression grow serious. then thoughtful. On the ride home, beneath a canopy of stars so bright they seemed to illuminate the path, Olivia's curiosity got the better of her. What did Mr. Crawford want to discuss? Quinn was quiet for a moment before answering. He offered me my old job back. The ranch is expanding again, and he needs an experienced foreman. The pay would be double what I was making before. Olivia felt her heart sink. It was an excellent opportunity, one that would be foolish to refuse. But it would mean the end of their partnership, the dissolution of everything they'd built together. That's wonderful, she managed, striving to keep her voice even. When would you start? Quinn guided his horse closer to hers, their legs nearly touching as they rode side by side. I told him no. Olivia's head snapped toward him in surprise. You refused. But Quinn, that position, the salary, it's everything you've worked for. No, Quinn said softly. Not everything. In the moonlight, his eyes found hers, and the intensity of his gaze made her breath catch. The farm is doing well, Olivia. Better than either of us expected. But more importantly, we're doing well together. I don't want to walk away from that. They had reached the farmhouse now, the familiar silhouette a welcome sight against the night sky. Quinn dismounted first, then moved to help Olivia down from her horse. His hands lingered at her waist a moment longer than necessary after her feet touched the ground. Quinn, Olivia began, uncertain what she wanted to say but knowing something important hung in the balance between them. I've been thinking, he said, his voice low in the quiet night. Our arrangement has worked well as a business partnership, but lately I've found myself hoping for something more. Olivia's heart beat faster. The moment she had both anticipated and feared finally arrived. What sort of something more? Instead of answering immediately, Quinn reached out slowly, giving her time to step away if she wished. When she remained still, he gently tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, his fingers brushing her cheek in a touch so tender it made her eyes sting with unexpected tears. I find myself thinking of you first thing each morning and last thing each night, he admitted. I find myself planning not just for the next season, but for years ahead, and in every future I imagine, you're there beside me. Olivia swallowed hard, emotions rising within her like floodwaters breaking through a dam. Are you saying what I think you're saying, Quinn Sutherland? A smile touched his lips, gentle and certain. I believe I'm saying I've fallen in love with you, Olivia Sullivan, completely and irrevocably. The simple, honest declaration hung in the air between them, as real and solid as the ground beneath their feet. Olivia had known, somewhere deep in her heart, that they had been moving toward this moment for months. Yet hearing the words spoken aloud still took her breath away. You don't have to say anything now, Quinn continued when she remained silent. I know it might be too soon after Thomas, or you might not feel the same way. I just needed you to know. Olivia shook her head, finding her voice at last. It's not too soon, and I do feel the same way. She reached up to touch his face, her fingers tracing the strong line of his jaw. I've been falling in love with you since the day you rode up to fix my fence without being asked. The joy that transformed Quinn's expression was like sunrise breaking over the mountains, gradual at first, then blazingly bright. He drew her closer, one hand at the small of her back, the other cradling her face with exquisite gentleness. May I kiss you, Olivia? He whispered, his breath warm against her skin. Yes, she replied simply, her heart soaring as his lips met hers in a kiss that felt like coming home after a long journey, familiar and new all at once. When they finally parted, Quinn rested his forehead against hers, both of them breathless and smiling. I should go, he said reluctantly, glancing toward the bunkhouse. For propriety's sake. Olivia nodded, though she was loath to end the perfect moment. Tomorrow we can talk about what happens next. Tomorrow, Quinn agreed, stealing one more brief kiss before reluctantly stepping back. Sleep well, Olivia. You too, Quinn. Winter descended on the Arizona territory with surprising force that year. December brought heavy snows to the mountains and icy winds to the valleys. The farm settled into a quieter rhythm. The days shorter and the work focused more on maintenance than expansion. For Olivia and Quinn, the cold months provided an opportunity to deepen their relationship away from the constant demands of the growing season. They spent long evenings by the fire in Olivia's parlor, talking about their hopes and dreams, sharing stories from their pasts, and gradually mapping out a future together. 2 weeks before Christmas, Quinn rode into town on a mysterious errand, returning with a small package that he refused to explain. Olivia pretended not to notice his secretive behavior, though curiosity nearly got the better of her on several occasions. On Christmas Eve, they attended the service at Chloride's small church, joining the community in hymns and prayers of thanksgiving. The building was festively decorated with pine boughs and candles, the scent of evergreen mingling with beeswax and winter spices. After the service, they returned to the farm through gently falling snow, the world hushed and peaceful around them. Quinn had prepared a special dinner, a small turkey, potatoes from their root cellar, and vegetables they had preserved from their successful garden. They ate by candlelight, the farmhouse warm and cozy despite the gathering storm outside. When the meal was finished, Quinn seemed suddenly nervous, his usual calm demeanor replaced by an endearing awkwardness. "I have something for you," he said finally, producing the small package he'd brought from town days earlier. "A Christmas gift." Olivia accepted it with a smile, carefully unwrapping the brown paper to reveal a small velvet box. Her heart began to race as she realized what it might contain. Inside, nestled against dark velvet, was a ring, a delicate gold band set with a small but perfect diamond that caught the candlelight and reflected it back in tiny flashes of fire. "Quinn," she breathed, looking up to find him watching her intently. "It was my mother's," he explained. "The one thing I kept when I lost everything else. I've carried it with me all these years, waiting for the right woman to give it to." He moved from his chair to kneel beside her, taking her hand in his. "Olivia Sullivan, when I came to your farm that first evening, I was just being a good neighbor. I had no idea I was finding the other half of my heart." Tears gathered in Olivia's eyes as Quinn continued, his voice steady despite the emotion visible on his face. "These past months have shown me what it means to truly build something worthwhile, not just a farm or a business, but a life shared with someone who understands you completely. I love you, Olivia. I want to be your partner in everything, for all the days we have left." He squeezed her hand gently. "Will you marry me?" For a moment, Olivia couldn't speak past the lump in her throat. She thought of Thomas, of the grief she had carried, and how Quinn had helped her find joy again without ever asking her to forget. She thought of the farm they had saved together, the future they were building day by day, and she thought of the love that had grown between them, unexpected, unhurried, and unshakably strong. "Yes," she said finally, her voice breaking with happiness. "Yes, Quinn Sutherland, I will marry you." Quinn's face lit with such pure joy that Olivia couldn't help but laugh through her tears as he slipped the ring onto her finger. Then he was pulling her into his arms, lifting her from the chair and spinning her around the small kitchen, both of them laughing like children. When he set her down, she reached up to frame his face between her hands. "I love you," she said simply, watching as the words brought a new softness to his expression. "More than I ever thought possible." Their second kiss was deeper than the first, filled with promise and a certainty that whatever challenges lay ahead, they would face them together. They were married on New Year's Day of 1886 in the same church where they had celebrated Christmas. The entire town turned out for the occasion, curious to witness the culmination of what many considered a remarkable romance. The practical partnership that had saved Olivia's farm had blossomed into a love story that would be retold in chloride for generations. Mrs. Crawford organized a reception at the town hall, where townspeople and ranchers alike gathered to celebrate with dancing and feasting. Even Mr. Harrington, the bank examiner who had uncovered Prescott's fraud, sent a congratulatory telegram from Tucson. As twilight fell, Quinn and Olivia slipped away from the festivities, eager to begin their life together properly. They rode home through the winter landscape, the setting sun painting the snow-covered fields in shades of rose and gold. "Mrs. Sutherland," Quinn said as they approached the farmhouse, their home now in every sense of the word. "Welcome home." Olivia smiled at her new name and the warm promise it held. "It feels right, doesn't it? Like this is exactly where we're meant to be." Quinn helped her down from her horse, then surprised her by sweeping her into his arms to carry her across the threshold. "Exactly where we're meant to be," he agreed, kissing her as he carried her into the warmth of their home. Spring arrived early that year, as if nature itself blessed their union. The snow melted, revealing tender green shoots beneath, and the creek ran high with clear, cold water. Quinn and Olivia worked side by side, expanding their cattle operation, planting new crops, and continuing to improve the farmhouse that was now truly their home. By summer, their efforts were showing remarkable results. The farm that had been on the brink of foreclosure a year earlier was now one of the most productive in the area. They hired 2 young men from town to help with the increasing workload, and Quinn began teaching them the ranching skills he had learned over years on the range. In July, just after the anniversary of their partnership, Olivia shared news that brought Quinn even greater joy than their successful farm. They were expecting their first child, due to arrive in the winter. "Are you happy?" she asked as they sat on the porch swing one evening, watching fireflies dance above the fields where their cattle grazed contentedly. Quinn placed his hand gently over her still flat stomach, wonder and love mingled in his expression. "Happier than I ever dreamed possible," he said softly. "A year ago, I had nothing but hopes and savings. Now I have everything a man could want: a home, a farm, a beautiful wife, and a child on the way." Olivia leaned against his shoulder, contentment washing over her as she gazed out at the land they had saved together. "It's funny how life works out, isn't it? If the bank hadn't threatened to take the farm, we might never have found each other." "Sometimes the worst moments lead to the best outcomes," Quinn agreed, pressing a kiss to her temple. "Though I have to admit, I occasionally think about tracking down Mr. Prescott in prison just to thank him." Olivia laughed at the absurd idea. "Let's not go that far, but I am grateful in a strange way for the chain of events that brought us here." As darkness fell completely, they remained on the porch, planning for the future that stretched bright and promising before them. The farm that had once been a burden too heavy for Olivia to bear alone had become the foundation for a life richer than either of them had dared to hope for, all because a cowboy had stopped to fix a broken fence, and in doing so, had mended 2 broken hearts as well. Their son, William Thomas Sutherland, was born on a snowy February morning in 1887, with Mrs. Crawford serving as midwife and Quinn pacing anxiously outside the bedroom door until the infant's first cry rang through the house. When Quinn was finally allowed to enter, the sight of Olivia cradling their newborn son brought tears to his eyes. "He's perfect," Quinn whispered, carefully taking the tiny bundle into his arms. "Looks like his mother." With his father's chin, Olivia observed with a tired smile, and hopefully his father's good heart. As the years passed, the Sullivan-Sutherland farm continued to prosper. They added a daughter, Emily Rose, to their family in 1889, and by the time Arizona achieved statehood in 1912, their operation had grown into one of the most successful ranches in the northwestern part of the new state. William and Emily grew up strong and capable, learning the value of hard work and partnership from parents who faced every challenge together. Both children eventually married and built their own homes on different sections of the expanded ranch, creating a family legacy that would endure for generations. In their later years, Quinn and Olivia would often sit on the same porch swing where they had shared so many important moments, watching their grandchildren play in the fields where cattle once grazed. The world had changed around them. Automobiles replaced horses, telephones connected the once isolated communities, and chloride evolved from a mining town to a growing commercial center. But some things remained constant: the love they shared, the land they had nurtured, and the story they had written together, a story that began with a woman's farm being stolen by the bank, and a cowboy who paid her debt with his life savings, only to receive in return a treasure far more valuable than gold.